Welcome back to the Cage Rage podcast. This is Devin, and this is a CRP News Roundup for September the 7th, 2019. It is fight day, and the UFC is returning to the Middle East, to the United Arab Emirates in the town of Abu Dhabi for UFC 242 today. Headlined by a big and much anticipated UFC lightweight title unification bout between current undisputed champion Khabib, the Eagle Nurmagomedov, and the challenger interim lightweight champion Dustin the Diamond Poirier. We've covered that extensively here on the CRP News Roundups this week, and do want to give a little bit of update on this bout. Just hours away, we've got weigh-in results from yesterday, and everybody made weight except for Sarah Morais. She weighed in 3 pounds heavy, and she will be docked. Her purse will be docked accordingly. But you had Khabib and Dustin both coming in at 155 pounds. Barbosa and Felder, the co-main event, both of them coming in at 155 pounds, and the rest of the main card made weight with no problem. And, I do want to just give some last-second thoughts here on this main event. It's been such an inspiration to me to see Dustin Poirier and where he's at. This is a guy who I've seen it on the local scale. I've seen it in my own personal life with my family. I've seen it with my own team back when I used to compete and train on a regular basis. People that we knew had a significant amount of potential and just hadn't really just figured it all out, put the puzzle pieces together and really started getting their stride. Well, it takes a lot of trial and error. It takes a lot of, sometimes you get these guys who get knocked down a little bit and they get back up. They get knocked down, they get back up. They get knocked down, they get back up. And every time they come back stronger and stronger and stronger. Not everybody has a career like Khabib. 27-0. Undefeated, dominant. Sometimes you get a really talented person who has to face a little adversity. And that's what I like about this fight. You've got a great underdog story. And watching that ESPN clip about Dustin and his wife Julie and the charity that they run, granting the wish for a sick child that died, I believe at the age of 6, who will never get to see his wish, who never got to see his wish fulfilled, but Dustin nevertheless made it happen for their community. This young child's very selfless wish was for a park to be made for other children and for it to be accessible to other handicapped children. And Dustin made that happen. It was very emotional. It was like getting sprayed with pepper spray for me. I guess I'm a softie. But Dustin Poirier is a great underdog. And him talking about how he didn't finish 9th grade and he's accomplished everything he has with his fist. This beautiful... The interviews I've heard with Ariel Helwani about him talking about his wife and about how she stuck through him when he had nothing and she believed in his dreams. It would be a really amazing story. And I love Khabib too. I think that he's a misunderstood person. And I think that he's an amazingly dominant athlete who has a lot of class, and that incident with Conor McGregor should not define him. And I think that, I'm not going to be upset if Khabib wins, especially if it sets up the great fight between him and Tony Ferguson that needs to happen. But Dustin Poirier winning this fight would be a true, beautiful underdog story. And it's great to see where he's at. We always knew he had a lot of potential, and I'm very much looking forward to this bout. But also today we got Bellator 226, and this will be live on DAZN tonight, and it's headlined by a Bellator heavyweight title bout between Ryan Bader and Chet Congo. Ryan Bader, champ at Bellator, champion at light heavyweight, champion at heavyweight. And we got the weigh-in results here. He came in at 228 pounds, Congo 239 pounds. And then you also have on this card the beginning of the 16-man featherweight Grand Prix, where they have the 16 top fighters in their mind in Bellator in this 16-man tournament, and including the champion Patricio Pitbull. And the first 4 fights of the first round kick off with this fight. You got Daniel Strauss taking on Derek Campos, Pat Curran taking on Adam Borix, Emmanuel Sanchez taking on Taiwan Claxton, and Sam Sicilia taking on Pedro Carvalho. All these guys are going to be in the running for the title, in the running to win this tournament. They all made weight. So, in the big fights of the weekend on both the UFC and Bellator, everybody's on weight and ready to go. So much looking forward to that. I think Ryan Bader has pretty much established himself maybe as the best fighter in Bellator coming from the UFC. So his opportunity to start defending his titles that he's won as the champ in Bellator. But moving on, we definitely got some news we need to talk about, and this is news that's going to be carried into the next week. It's going to be carried into the next coming months, and this is big news. There's a lot to analyze here with what's been coming out with this, and it started just a few days ago, just like yesterday. We got news from Ariel Helwani himself, from the horse's mouth himself on Twitter, that the Kamaru Usman-Colby Covington bout that I already reported earlier this week is being targeted for UFC 244 at Madison Square Garden in November. It is not set in stone. They don't know for sure if this is going to happen. You get right here, like with this MMA fighting headline, Morning Report, Kamaru Usman versus Colby Covington reportedly in trouble. George Masvidal calls out Usman. Usman responds. Let's not look at these articles, though. Let's actually, like I said, let's actually go to the source here. Here's Ariel Helwani on Twitter, and I've always said, I am a definite fanboy because I like credibility. I like people that have been consistently accurate over the years. And Ariel Helwani, there's not even anybody close in the world of MMA. He is the premier. He's one of the main faces of the sport of MMA, in my opinion, especially in the United States. Ariel Helwani, Twitter account. The Kamaru Usman versus Colby Covington 170 title fight is far from done, multiple sources say. In fact, negotiations have hit a snag, and UFC is now looking at other options, sources say. Those options include a different welterweight title fight and or a different main event. Later on, we see this tweet. The making of this fight has taken many twists and turns over the past few days. So there's no telling if they end up with it, but right now it's not in good standing, and other options are being explored, developing. This is for the MSG card on November 2nd, by the way. And there was a key detail in there that Jorge Masvidal has called out Kamaru Usman for the title fight. Jorge Masvidal notably is at the high point of his career, coming off in this year, knocking out Darren Till in London, flattening him, and then coming back and getting the quickest knockout in UFC history over Ben Askren with a flying KO in 5 seconds. So Masvidal, with his personality, with his performances, is really got a lot of people gravitating toward his personality and to his persona. And he's coming out saying that he wants the Usman fight, but the thing is, he is Colby Covington's teammate. And he's actually lower than Covington on the rankings. He's only on a 2-fight win streak. Masvidal lost to Wonderboy Thompson, and he's came back and beat Darren Till and beat Ben Askren. And yeah, his popularity's high, but so is Covington's. And they're teammates down at ATT in Coconut Creek, Florida. So you have these two teammates at the pinnacle of their career right now, both wanting a title fight. The negotiations for the Covington-Usman bout, Usman the champion at welterweight, have hit a snag, according to Helwani. They're not going well. And then his teammates coming in saying, I want the fight. And they're exploring different options. They're exploring different main events. Well, with that note, over the past month, since Nate Diaz returned at UFC 241, beat Anthony Pettis, first fight since his epic wars with Conor McGregor, where he was at an all-time high. The internet has just been flooded with this. And then Nate, I forgot to mention, Nate, right after the Anthony Pettis fight, calls out Jorge Masvidal. Everybody's up about this fight. Everybody wants to see it. Everybody wants to see Masvidal and Diaz. So right now, you've got Covington and Usman, that what everybody thought was all but done. They've hit a snag, and this has led to possibly seeing Usman fighting Masvidal. And that would destroy the Diaz-Masvidal bout. It would destroy the Usman-Covington bout, where there's a lot of hype behind. That would, in my opinion, be the worst thing that could happen. But this story gets even weirder and even more complex and even more to analyze and think of from this MMA Junkie headline that every MMA hardcore fan needs to go look at. Friendship over? Colby Covington lays into trash bag George Masvidal. A brewing drama over the next UFC welterweight title fight has apparently gotten to Colby Covington. The former interim champ snapped at his longtime friend and teammate Jorge Masvidal after Gamebred called out Nate Diaz. Yeah, I forgot to mention that part. So there's all this talk about Masvidal and Usman fighting, that Masvidal would step in and get this title fight at UFC 244 over his teammate, all this. Masvidal basically says he ends, but then he comes back with this tweet. And keep in mind, that Covington is his teammate. I'm sorry, I'm sitting here, I'm trying to find this tweet real quick. Covington comes out and he's responding to this tweet where Masvidal comes out and he says, "Hey, Nate Diaz, F these losers. See you at MSG. The baddest mother effer title on the line. Supremely necessary." So he comes out, he said, and Masvidal says, "F these guys. Forget Usman, forget Covington. Let's fight. I don't even care about the belt. I know that this is going to be a bigger lucrative fight for me to fight with Nate Diaz." And Covington didn't take well to this, apparently. And he comes out and he makes this, and remember, the headline of this is, is friendship broken after this? Sure sounds like it. Listen to this tweet from Colby Covington. Gamebred fighter, meaning Masvidal. "I know you are dumb and desperate, but you spelled journeyman title wrong, Junior. Reading is fundamental and supremely necessary, super necessary. Just like winning is super necessary to get title fights. You should try both sometimes, you trash bag." That is a damning and harsh tweet aimed at his supposed friend and teammate. So what's really behind this? Because the conspiratorial side of me looks at this and thinks, oh, well, Ariel Wandi came out later and just before I get into this, shared a picture, a little square of all four of them, taking up a part of the square. It said, which pairing should happen here? And pretty much everybody's like, well, the pairing that's been obviously makes sense. Usman should fight Covington for the belt, and Diaz should fight Masvidal. Obviously. My theory on this, I think this is, I'm not saying that this can't be completely organic and there's really in-house fighting and there's really some division here and there's really some issues going on about what's really going to how these fights are going to take place. Maybe there really is some negotiation issues. I don't know. To me, it looks like at UFC 244 we're going to get Usman versus Covington and Diaz versus Masvidal. Or at least that those two fights are going to happen. But I think that it seems like that's the plan, is at Madison Square Garden November the 2nd. And that this is all about just getting a lot of attention on those four guys. And if that's what it is, I think it's brilliant. If this is some negotiation issues, then I'm a little nervous because the UFC can mess up anything. And if they mess this up, they're fools. Because they got two awesome fights with both Covington and Usman for the title. Covington's on a 7-fight win streak. He just came off probably his most impressive win over Robbie Lawler. Kamaru Usman undefeated in the UFC. Just completely dominated former champion Tyron Woodley. Masvidal and Diaz, their stocks have never been higher. That's a really just amazing fight. I think it does need to be 5 rounds. But I think the UFC will get this done, and I think they're both going to be at Madison Square Garden. The only question I have with that is, if that happens with Diaz and Masvidal being the co-main event, do they make that a 3-round fight? Because it wouldn't be for a title unless they opened up the 65 weight class and made that the title fight, which I don't think they're going to do. But that being a 3-round fight just seems like a disservice to such a great fight. So that's some serious developments right here at the top of the welterweight division with big names, and I think that's very interesting to look at, to question about where do we go from here. One more story for the day, though. I've been documenting all week. On Monday, I talked about BJ Penn getting knocked out in a street fight, in a bar altercation or whatever in Hawaii. And then I covered about how he responded to it, didn't really own up, take any credibility on it. Well, I also covered about how he has been scheduled, and it was rumored that he's going to fight Nick Lentz again, that he still was going to get one more fight in the UFC before he hangs it up, and how crazy that was. Well, Dana White has come out and officially said BJ Penn's UFC career is over after a recent street fighting video. And if that is true, then I deeply applaud Dana White. And I have to give him a round of applause for that, because that's the right thing to do. BJ's at the end of his career, and he needs, I think, some mental evaluation. I think he needs to definitely get some spiritual counseling and hopefully head off into retirement and live a decently and productive, happy, and self-controlled life. Stay tuned for further updates here from the CRP. Subscribe if you haven't. Like us here on Facebook, and go subscribe on YouTube. Check out our playlist. Check out our page on a regular basis. I'm going to be trying to keep you up to date with some analysis and covering all the news as I see fit, seeing what I think is relevant, what's important, and what needs to be discussed. Stay tuned. Big event this week. 2 big events this week. And we will recap them. Talk to you next time.